Can everyone hear me in back? Okay. I get to talk about my favorite subject here, which is me. Me and my industrial career. And just to give you a roadmap of what I've done since I got out of grad school, after getting a BS at Illinois Institute of Technology, PhD from the University of Rochester, and a postdoc at University of Notre Dame, I worked on the East Coast for 3 years doing organic chemical process research for a company, Hercules. Back then it was the 10th largest U.S. chemical company. It doesn't exist anymore. It was taken over, acquired by Ashland Oil. Then I decided to leave for a variety of reasons. Mainly, I had a great boss. He got promoted. Another guy got demoted and became my new boss and was not a happy camper and made the life of his staff miserable. So I decided to leave. That was the time of the oil boom, the first oil boom. 3 or 4 years after the Arab oil embargo in the 70s, American companies had begun drilling like crazy, and the oil companies and the oil field service companies were hiring like crazy, chemists, chemical engineers, petroleum engineers. So I went to work for Halliburton Services, and I switched from being an organic chemist to being a water-soluble polymer chemist. And I learned a whole lot about geology and petroleum engineering in order to do my job. And I did that for 8 years, and then the oil boom rapidly deflated in the early and mid 1980s. And I decided to leave because Halliburton had had 3 layoffs. I thought I was living on borrowed time, so I went job hunting, and I ended up at Shell Oil, now Royal Dutch Shell, here in Houston at the West Hollow Technology Center, where I did surfactant research. I was hired not for a specific chemical knowledge base, but because all this stuff I learned about the oil field. And that was amazing because through sheer dumb luck, I was in the job market for 6 days before I got an offer from Shell that was too good to turn down. So it was great, but you can't count on lightning to strike like that. And there at Shell, I worked on surfactants for enhanced oil recovery and for the paper industry, primarily removing ink from pulped waste paper for paper recycling, which was pretty neat and pretty fun to do. And then they sold the division I worked in, Shell did, and I went to work for a small specialty chemicals company, Toma Products. And this is where my career starts to get a little complicated. While still working for Halliburton, I was doing a lot of writing of technical bulletins, MSDS sheets, and that sort of thing. And I got into science writing then as a part-time side, outside of work activity. I continued that with Shell. And then in 2004, Toma Products built a new research center up in Wisconsin in a small town. I grew up in Chicago. I'm a big city person. So I didn't want to go up there. So I decided to resign and become self-employed, and that's what I'm doing now, a combination of being a self-employed consultant and a science and technical writer, and I've been doing that for 6 years. So working in industry, it sounds like most of the discussion so far has been in the academic environment. Industry is a bit different. You start off by working hands-on in the lab, at the bench, doing experiments yourself. You may be working in actual research on product or process discovery and development. You may be doing technical service, for instance, trying to find out if certain products will do the required job for specific customers. You may be doing quality control testing, often in labs located not in research centers, but in chemical production plants. And oftentimes nowadays you'll work as a member of a multidisciplinary team. And in my case, I generally would work on a team where there were chemists, there were engineers, there were patent attorneys, there were experts on health, safety, and environmental issues, there were production people from the plant that would eventually make this new product that we were developing, there were salespeople, so a variety of different backgrounds, variety of different levels of chemistry expertise that we had to communicate with, both in writing and orally. And one becomes successful in industry by developing profitable products and processes. That is the key. And your career options as you continue working and develop experience are to stay at the bench and move up to become what many companies call a senior scientist. You can become a team leader or a group leader and then move up the R&D management ladder, or you can move over to sales, marketing, or general business management. Quite a few people at Shell started in research and eventually became plant managers of chemical plants and then moved up in business management that way. And where my career got complicated was back when I was working for Halliburton. I found that I was able to better communicate orally, despite my northern accent, and in writing with our customers, who were mainly oil company field engineers. And so I was doing a lot of writing and a lot of oral presentations, and that led me to start writing both science articles and articles about chemistry careers. And currently there's an ACS book, Career Management for Scientists and Engineers, that I have propped up on the front table. It's an ACS book that you can find on Amazon.com. It's actually faster to order it from them than any other way. And if you just search, putting my full name in quote marks, you can find it quite quickly. But anyway, it's two parts. One is job hunting for an industrial job. The second part is, once you got the job, how do you succeed and move ahead in your career? So I kept on doing that, beginning in around 1987, writing for third parties, for magazines primarily. And Shell was very, very generous in letting me do that, as long as I wasn't giving away their secrets. And the other key thing was they adopted a flex time work schedule, 980, where you got alternate Fridays off, which was fantastic if you wanted to sit at home and write. So that really made a difference as far as the amount of writing I was able to do. Becoming a science or a technical writer, and I think I'm both, two primary options. You can work for yourself, constantly trying to get your work published in different magazines or on the internet, other publications, or you can work as a staff member. And if you work as a staff member, you can work for companies, you can work for magazines and newspapers. You know, the prime example that many of you see every week is CNN. If you check their masthead on the second page and table of contents page, you can see listed contributing editors and writers. These are the people producing the articles that are actually in the magazine. There's university press offices, and Rice probably has those. When someone makes a discovery or does something noteworthy, who is a member of the science department, departments plural, particularly the chemistry department, someone is going to sit down with that professor and write up a press release suitable for the general public to read. There's scientific societies like ACS that employ science writers elsewhere besides their science magazine. There's advocacy, advocacy groups like Friends of the Earth that also employ them. And there's the web, TV, and radio. Career strategies, I saw the wave. Helen Free, former ACS president, elected to the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Very nice lady. She gave a lot of career talks, and she always stressed, and I heard this from her more than 20 years ago, always have a plan B. And that's what I decided to do, was have a plan B. That's where I started to get into the science writing as an potential alternative to a full-time lab bench career. You need an ability to constantly adapt to changing circumstances. You need to understand what the business and technology trends in your company and in your industry actually are. Networking is critical. And have fun. I mean, I've been lucky. I've always had fun in my jobs. I've talked to people that haven't. I feel really sorry for them. And find an acceptable balance for you between your work and your personal life, and this will change with time as you take on different responsibilities in your personal life. So you need to always have an exit strategy for your current job. If I get fired tomorrow, what am I going to do? Do I have a resume ready to send out to people? What industries am I going to look at? And am I going to change direction a bit in my career? All these things you need to consider. Networking helps you do that, both for job hunting and research partnerships. Maybe during the networking time or the general questions, I can talk about some of the terrific research partnerships I've developed with people I met at ACS and other professional society meetings. Another important one, never burn bridges when changing jobs. Nowadays, people often go to work for their former employers. That used to be considered a no-no. When I decided to consult, my first 3 customers were all former employers of mine, because I had left without losing my temper and blowing up at anybody, despite what I wanted to say at the time. Find your passion, make it your job. I had one of the greatest times of my life in the BP oil well blowout in the Gulf of Mexico, because I did a lot of writing about that, more from the engineering side than actually the environmental side. But it was great. It was fantastic. It was fun. Going to Anaheim, I took 2.5 days before the national meeting. I was offshore on a Navy ship undergoing a shakedown cruise. The Navy ship just chock full of advanced materials. I got a lot of information on advanced engineering, advanced materials that's going to appear in an article for a mechanical engineering magazine. The work-life balance I mentioned, and here I am now self-employed. I work with oil field service companies, with oil companies, chemical companies, and consumer product companies. With the exception of the third, most of my consulting is in the Houston area, because despite electronic communication, despite teleconferencing, people still like face-to-face meetings. I write for companies, I write for magazines, I write for websites. I'm active in the ACS. I'm a career consultant. I'm a counselor. I just got appointed this year to the publications committee, and am more or less still learning my job there. But that just adds a new dimension to my life. The kids are grown and tell me to get lost when I try to, get involved too much in their life. So I do more my own thing now. And that is it.
We're going to do questions at the end. So I believe